Hi, I'm Selena from Annie's Bookstop of Worcester, and I'm here with Curt Curtin, who is from Worcester, and he is a poet, and he's going to tell you a little bit about the type of poetry he writes. Curt?
Yeah. Hello, and thank you for the introduction. I write the poetry that really deals more with poets than with some of the things they write about. That is to say, to look at their techniques, the kind of thinking that goes into poetry, and that sort of thing. Um, and I certainly do include, the object of other poets' writings, and but for the most part, I'm kind of prepared to talk about my own poems, and I assume that you have some of those. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so so perhaps there's some questions about that, about those poems. But to get into it, at least, I I write about mainly about people who are poets and what they enjoy doing and what I, in relation to them, enjoy doing with poetry itself. So I'm not sure what questions you would ask about that. I'm
Okay.
kind of open to whatever.
All right. The first question I'm going to ask you, what was the inspiration for your newest book, Kerry Dancers, I believe?
Oh, yeah. My inspiration, of course, was that we're coming close to St. Patrick's Day was one of the things, and I had been deeply involved with Irish presentation, Irish thoughts, and all of that. Though, up until fairly recently, I hadn't been near Ireland, but uh, but then I did go there, and I really ate it up, enjoyed it very, very much, and in fact was taken on by an Irish poetry group that just asked me to sit in and read some poems with them. Uh, so it's about Irish poetry, but about Irish life and certain aspects of Irish life and their their current conditions and how the Irish in Boston have managed to carry out their lives uh, on a kind of special model that is taken from their Irish birth and growing up in Ireland and taking the values of Irish people. And so I find them pretty close to what people in Ireland today are doing, besides farming and so on. Yeah. And so that's what some of the poems are about. Is the person who is describing to me his or her life or some part of it, and my remembrance of what I saw in Ireland, and also just to make it clear right away, my mother and father are both from Ireland, born and brought up in Ireland, as are my aunts and uncles, and so on down the line. So that there's a lot of Irish people in my history that has led me to be very interested, of course, in the story of the Irish or the stories of the Irish. And so that's where I started. It was with my mother and father coming over. My parents being the most notable people in, my lifespan. Right? Um, have made a wonderful voyage to here. They've been here for several years now, and it took a while for them to get together and get married here, but they did, and so then I found out that I had inherited a group of aunts and uncles and their children or whatever. So it's part of a good party. Also, my parents went every every month. They went to an Irish club in Boston. There are different ones but they're fairly strong organizations. They meet in Hibernian Hall in Roxbury, and they talk about Irish issues in the United States. How is it turning out for them? People who came over on a boat and landed with perhaps in some cases with almost nothing, and in others they had some wealth. So anyway, I wanted to write about that and kind of give people a feel for the Irish in America, how they managed to live, how they managed to make friends, and just what people normally do.
Mhm. Great. So what character did you love or hate the most when you were writing this book, and why?
What
What character did you
character?
love or
Oh
hate?
yes, oh, it's about a character. Hate. I didn't have anyone I hated in the poem. I didn't even touch on anything like that. So it was love, and it was plain and simple. It was my parents I was looking at, but I also was looking at some of the aunts and uncles and people that I'd grown pleasingly close to, in the United States, who came over about the same time as my parents did. So they all had really interesting adventures on their way through, and then in getting established as citizens and workers in the United States. My parents were hard workers for a very long time, and through the American Depression is right when they came in, and so my father was working pretty hard all the time, and he had a wonderful attitude about it. Uh, I never heard him complain. So, so he's the one who's the most known and the one I used more time on to explain his ways, that sort of thing.
So what other books can we expect from you in the near future?
What other
Other
books?
books can we expect from you in the
Uh,
near future?
I can't be sure, but one of the things we're thinking of now is a book for children, and I have written on children before, and I've belonged to uh, government agencies that look over children's lives, and so so that's one of the things I'm due to work on, and we have one or two books that we haven't put out for sale that we are considering also. So I really don't have to do much to the ones that are kind of ready for sale. And uh, the idea is mainly to get people of whatever background to get to know something about the Irish and their way of life, their ways of life. Yeah. And so that's just part of it, what we're doing.
Is that what the other two books are about?
That's uh, this this one I was talking about there is about about children, and it's for children. She's holding it up. Okay, it's weaving. Oh, here, I'll hold it up here.
Mm-hmm.
Weave science and soul. All right, and the science part, and because I have a kind of sideline interest in science and I read about it and so on. And the idea is to get people connected with different ways of learning and of life, and with children especially, to give children the kind of life that prepares them for a kind of happiness and good life. And so I have written others about that, but that's quite a while back, and so it's just one of the things I've wanted to do some more on,
That's
and
great.
yeah, and
That's
so
wonderful.
yeah, and
So,
they don't have to be Irish children.
okay. I was wondering about that.
As long as they're children, they qualify.
So,
Yeah.
what is your favorite part of being a writer?
What was my
Favorite part of being a writer?
favorite part? Oh God, writing. Yeah, and no, seriously, it's a pleasure. It's something I have wanted to do for a long, long time, and I did it all through school. I went to school here, of course, in a high school and college, and I've been a teacher of English, writing,
Mm-hmm.
and so on. So I really enjoy that work.
Mm-hmm.
It's nice. I enjoy the thinking.
The thinking. Okay. And what do you
Yeah,
enjoy? What do
yeah.
you consider the most challenging part of the writing process? And how do you overcome that?
Oh, uh, it it's just at times you'll find yourself kind of stopped for a bit, and so you really got to kind of dive in and examine the whole area and the thoughts you have been dealing with, and then move along to where it looks as if the next place needs to be, which is a very vague sort of explanation. But I don't see how it can be otherwise because I don't necessarily know exactly where I'm going.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I do, but sometimes no. I'm fishing. I'm going out there looking for something to write on. So that's kind of it. It takes a little work, but it's pleasurable, and so. And then I have friends who are kind of doing the same thing themselves, and so we swap ideas and that sort of thing too. Not so much usually. Mostly people stay on their own, handling all of their own work.
Great. So, what piece of advice would you want to share with other writers?
I'm sorry.
What piece of advice would you want to share with other writers?
Oh, what the first few words? What keeps?
What piece of advice?
Oh,
Want to
advice.
give them any
That was the one I
advice?
was having trouble with. Okay. What piece of advice? Um, First of all, pick something that you think you're going to enjoy, that
Hmm.
enjoy the depth, and uh, and then really go at it. Do a lot of basic reading. And writers almost always have to be readers that you really read a great deal,
Yes.
and then and not copy somebody's work, but sometimes copy the feeling that comes from a piece of work. So that's one of the things that I certainly have read. One of my favorites when I had from the time I was, early teens, was Mark Twain, and I just had his books. I had all, and I visited in Connecticut where there was a Mark Twain event going on and all that, and eventually I wound up going out to Elmira, New York, and that's where the company is that produced Mark Twain's the majority of Mark Twain's work,
Hmm.
and and I visited them and had a good talk, good exchange, and they took me to Mark Twain's home there, and so there's a lot of that kind of helping each other because writing is not something that you win by single points. You're really trying to build a whole image and a whole passage of time and serious ideas. And so anyway, that was why I went there, and they treated me very well just because I wanted to know Mark Twain.
That's great.
Yeah.
So, what is one thing that most people don't realize about you?
Um, that I'm incredibly handsome.
Yes, you are.
Uh, no, I just don't. I don't know. I think a lot of the time, I think they don't know what's going on up here, and,
Hmm.
uh, and they're I, generally I have good relationships with people, uh, but of course I meet a lot of people who are teaching since I was teaching for 20 some years, and and we just talk the same language, but also there are just lots of people. In the Irish clubs. That was one of the things I wanted to point out. Definitely, is that there are Irish clubs, and in Boston, most notably in Hibernian Hall.
Hmm.
And when I was a child, why I bring it up too is that it has a lot to do with the books about my mother and father, because went to the Irish clubs, and there were a lot of people there who spoke Irish and and carried the language to here, and a lot of people who were just new to the country, and then some people who had been here for nearly a lifetime, and they elected their own officers and all of that, and they were naturally looking out for Irish immigrants for their welfare and so on. But otherwise, it was a pleasure club. So, and that was what certainly caught my attention as a teenager. I go there and they have dancing, the Irish dancing, and part of the night is given over. A good part of the night is given over to dancing and Irish music. So somebody comes in with the equipment, and they set it up in in the same place that they're broadcasting from a lot of the time. So anyway, that's one feature that I found really helpful through my teen years. You know,
So it sounds like that's one of your passions.
pardon?
It sounds like one of your passions,
Oh,
dancing, Irish dancing.
oh, yeah, yeah. Oh, what to think of the Irish? There's a
Oh, come on, do more. I love that.
there's a great song.
That was great.
Yeah, the Kerry dancing, oh, the ring of the piper's horn. Oh, for one of those hours of gladness, gonna last like you too soon. And it goes. I mean,
You have a wonderful voice. I love that.
but it's it's a pleasurable song,
Yes.
very nice. Yeah. So that's one that gets sung pretty often in the Irish club. And well, where was I going with that? It's just
Your passions. I was asking you
oh
what
yes,
your
yes,
passions are.
yes.
Writing.
I did like the music. Well, I don't write music, but I really liked it there and liked the people.
But can we get back to what your passions are when you're not
My
writing? Your passions. What do you love to do when you're not
oh
writing?
oh well, there's my wife, of course.
Well, that was the next question. Is besides poetry, who or
Yeah.
what is the love of your life?
Oh well, there she is. Oh, she's taking all the credit. That's
So when you're writing, do you prefer music or do you prefer to be perfectly quiet when you're writing?
quiet, I'd say mainly. Um, not 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 without any break or any of that. It's a, it's a thought process, and you stick with it. You you don't want to lose it.
Mm-hmm.
You say you're writing something, and you've got something like a chapter going, and you're not going to walk away from it. Yeah, so there's that, and then of course looking back on things and finding problems in your own writing. I think that's what most writers do, is they put in the time and uh, and the effort and love it. Yeah,
Great.
it feels great.
Okay. So where can people find your work?
Well, mainly in bookstores.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there are a number of bookstores in the Boston area or in this area.
Yep. You can find
Yeah.
your work at Annie's Bookstop of Worcester.
Annie's, oh yes.
Yep. Just to put a
Yeah.
little plug in.
And we're treated really well there too. Very nice good people and some my wife would go there and just sit down and have a cup of coffee or something and talk things through and I'd be looking at what's new on the shelves and it doesn't it isn't something I do on a weekly basis but there are times when it's a good thing to do and they're very generous. I like those bookstores, the small bookstores, because they're very generous thinking, and they. I don't mean about money. I mean about themselves, and giving of aid and talking things through and whatever. So so the
Mhm.
website. Uh,
Yes. Now you have a website that people can find, that people can follow your work at.
Oh.
And it's www.curtcurtinpoet.com.
That's what it says here.
Yep. So I thought I'd make it a little easier for you. So that's your website. And so anybody who is interested in finding out more about what's going on with you,
Yes.
they can go to your website.
Yeah, that's good.
And find out more information.
Yeah.
Great.
And my wife is to be congratulated for that.
Great.
She
Okay. Well, that's all the questions I have for you, and so I'd like to thank you very much for coming and interviewing with us.
Yeah, well, I'm glad. And I can see the rows and rows of books behind you. Right.
We have lots of books.
It's always pleased me is just to see that row of books.
Yeah, it's great. Okay, well, thank you so much, and we hope to, when this pandemic is over,
Yes.
We hope to see you back at the store.
So my second shot.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much, and we will be seeing you back at the store soon. Okay.
Okay. And thank you. And